All of a sudden, the pharaohs had woken up in their pyramids after an extremely long sleep.
Centuries had gone by, and the occupants were feeling dismay, demanding for answers to why they had been sleeping for so long. As they questioned each other, a sense of worry began surging amongst them. After gaining consciousness, the pharaohs were eager to find out what had happened over all the years they had been asleep. There had been murmurs that something must have happened to their kingdom while they had been napping. As they stepped outside, they realized there was a major change in their surroundings. Most parts of the pyramid looked broken, and the vast fields their palace had once upon a time overlooked were now meadows with sparse groves and trees. To their surprise and disbelief, the pharaohs noticed that all the grandeur of their palace had disappeared. They searched in all the nooks and crannies, but nothing seemed to be left. Suddenly, they heard loud noises coming from the nearby temple and decided to investigate. The enemies of the pharaohs had raided the temple and were looting it of its gold and all its riches. While the pharaohs were about to attack them for their egregious actions, the raiders saw them and fled the scene without any warning. Left with nothing except their clothes on their back, the pharaohs were in shock and were trying to figure out how best to move forward. In order to quickly retrieve their lost treasure, the pharaohs decided to make a plan to track down the raiders without any delay. Determined to reclaim their empire, the pharaohs devised an ingenious plan. They would sneak into the raiders' base camp and steal back their looted treasure under the cover of darkness. It was going to be a daring mission, and they knew they had to be swift and smart. As they set out to the raiders' camp, the pharaohs found themselves in a maze of winding paths, full of fierce animals and dangerous terrains. The sun was at its peak, and the scorching heat was making it hard for them to keep their focus. But that didn't put an end to their courage and zeal. Soon enough, the pharaohs managed to get closer to the base camp and found themselves surrounded by numerous watchposts, manned by stern-looking guards, keeping a close eye on the entrance.
The pharaohs had to wait until sundown before they could enter.
When the sun was finally setting, the pharaohs had their best chance to reach their destination unnoticed. After a few hours, they had arrived at their target. Within minutes, they infiltrated the camp and started searching the tents for their treasures. After rummaging through several tents, the pharaohs discovered that all their gold and precious items had already been taken away. Furious and disappointed, the pharaohs lacked the courage to fight back, so they decided to retreat without risking further harm. As the pharaohs were about to leave the camp, one of them spotted a secret passage leading underground. Intrigued, he asked the others to investigate it. Reluctant at first, the pharaohs eventually decided to take a look at it. Following the path, the pharaohs ended up in a hidden chamber filled with gold and jewelry. After examining the items, they realized the raiders had not stolen any of these items and left them locked in the secret chambers. It was a miraculous discovery. Delighted at discovering such a trove of wealth, the pharaohs grabbed as many bags of gold and jewels as they could carry and headed back to their kingdom. On the way, they discussed the injustice suffered to them by their enemies and vowed to make them pay once they reached their palaces. Back at their palaces, the pharaohs gathered all their soldiers and advisors to brief them on their next course of action. After planning thoroughly, they sent out small contingents to chase down their enemies and bring them to justice. The pharaoh's soldiers traveled far and wide, eventually tracking down the raiders who had caused so much destruction to their kingdom. With the help of their loyal subjects, the pharaohs organized a trial and sentenced the criminals to death for their heinous crimes. Nothing could stop the pharaohs from regaining the glory of their kingdom. After punishing those responsible for their misfortune, the pharaohs began rebuilding their palaces and restoring their wealth. They also started arranging festivals, processions, and cultural activities to celebrate their return to prosperity. As their kingdom flourished and regained its previous magnificence, the pharaohs also spread good news of having defeated their enemies to other nations. News of their successes and accomplishments soon became widespread, granting them much fame and recognition. After several months of hard work and preparations, the pharaohs held a grand coronation ceremony to commemorate their return in immense power and glory. They invited leaders from all around the world to witness and celebrate their success. With the goodwill and support of their respected allies, the pharaohs created powerful alliances and formed an even stronger base to protect their kingdom from any future threat. Finally, they had re-established a large and strong government to secure their thriving empire. With true leadership, diligence, and patience, the pharaohs were able to revive the grandeur of their nation, once again being respected and admired by the people and other countries. As their reign came to an end, the pharaohs were known for their fairness and wise governance, leaving behind a legacy of greatness for generations to come.